didn't want to do that. Stop moving my stuff. Stop touching my stuff. We're a little zoomed in. My face looks better. Wow. If y'all hate how close my face looks, let me know. But, you know, it looks fancy. I never know how to start these videos. I never know how to start a video. But I think I want to start with a thank you. My epic video did so well. And it's still doing well. It's kind of slowed down a bit. But that's because I haven't posted anything in a while. My channel has some new subscribers. So if you're new here, hi. Great to have you. And if you're here watching my content and there's more stuff you want to see, let me know. I'm here to make... What's one of my favorite YouTubers? They say, I'm here to make stuff if you're here to watch. Yeah. Today we're going to be talking about Sweeney Todd. A tender tale of Sweeney Todd. I've always been familiar with Sweeney Todd. I always knew it was one of those classic, really good musicals that everyone should listen to, which is also another video. I'm going to do a gateway musical video where I talk about my recommendations. I knew that the Tim Burton movie existed, but I didn't watch it until October of last year. I was an RA at the time and I watched it with one of my residents. She wanted to watch it for Halloween, so we watched it and I thought the movie was good. The music was okay. The gothic aesthetic was really cool to watch. And it was directed by Tim Burton, so you know he can really create that aesthetic. Obviously, you had Helen Bonham Carter. Obviously, you had Johnny Depp. What threw me off was obviously I recognized those two, but Severus Snape was Judge Turpin and Borat was Adolfo Pirelli. That threw me off. But the twist hit at the end. I did not see it coming at all. I didn't know the plot, so I went into it completely blind. And yeah, it's a really good tragedy. It was a really good story. But I didn't have a strong attachment to the musical. I thought it was good after watching it for the first time. I didn't listen to the album or do any research or anything. All I know is that it was based on a stage version and it was one of Matt Pat's favorite musicals, or if not Matt Pat's favorite musical. I didn't really get into it, didn't really get the hype. That is until I recently listened to the 2013 Broadway cast recording, and now we are here. If you don't know the plot of Sweeney Todd, the full title is Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, but I'm going to kind of shorten it to Sweeney Todd. Now is the time to listen to the musical or watch the musical. Throw on a movie in the background, but if you want to see Sweeney Todd perform well, there are plenty of slime tutorials on YouTube. Wink, wink, wink. I will be referencing many of them in the comments below and adding some of these performances. I'd recommend the stage version. It's different and in my opinion does it a lot better than the movie. I feel like that's not really a hot take, but it does it so much better than the movie version for many, many reasons. One of the biggest reasons is that Johnny Depp can't sing at all. It's really embarrassing that I'm seeing some of these stage versions where these high schools are singing better than Johnny Depp. To be fair, they're competing against Jordan Fisher, Josh Groban, Annalie Ashford. But that's still a little embarrassing. If you don't want to watch the movie or you don't want to watch the slime tutorial on YouTube and you want to sit here and listen to me summarize the entire story of Sweeney Todd, sit down. I can't hold the camera or I'm going to mess up my whole aesthetic, but sit down, guys. I'm going to speed run the entire plot of Sweeney Todd. This is a new thing we're going to try. I'm going to be doing this for all my other videos. Last video I started doing a ranking of every single of my favorite songs. I'm still going to do that at the end of this video, but we're going to be doing a speed run of the entire plot. So sit down. Let's do this. Here we go. The musical opens with the citizens of London. They set the scene and they're background characters throughout the entire musical. For context, we are in 1846 London. It is grimy, cruddy, disgusting, gross. Everyone's poor. So we first meet Sweeney Todd through a young sailor named Anthony. He's spelled Anthony, but he's going to be said Antony for the rest of this video, who recently rescued Todd at sea. They arrive in London and Anthony is going on and on and on about how much he loves the city, how he's traveled the world, but he still misses the city. Meanwhile, Todd comes up to him and tells him this place is a shithole and I wish I never could come back here. At one point, a beggar woman approaches them as they're kind of conversing, going down the city. She seems to recognize Todd, but he brushes her off and throws her back into the street after she tries to offer sex to him and to Anthony. Todd leaves Anthony and heads to a rundown meat pie shop owned by a widow named Mrs. Lovett. She sings about how she has no customers, how she's all alone, how her pies are terrible, and how the world is just so dark and bleak right now. Todd tries one of her pies and immediately spits it out. It is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Dry, crusty, disgusting. They start talking and Todd asks, okay, if you're so broke, you've got a room above your pie shop. Why don't you rent out the place and that'll bring some money in? She tells him that no one wants because people say that it's haunted. Then she tells a story of the ghost that lives there, why it is haunted, that she does not realize is actually a story about him. She tells the tale of a man named Benjamin Barker. He's a brilliant, brilliant barber who was falsely accused for some crime and sentenced to prison by a corrupt judge named Judge Turpin. This same judge and his lackey, Beadle Bamford, lured Benjamin Barker's wife, Lucy, to a fancy ball under the guise of apologizing for sending his husband away. And again, Lucy has a kid, so she's now widowed again in if I do the math, 1831 London by herself. Instead of apologizing for what they did at this fancy little ball, Judge Turpin drugs and rapes her in front of everybody. Todd, who is Benjamin Barker, listens to the story horrified. He's screaming, no one have mercy on her. And he asks Mrs. Lovett, what happened to Lucy? Like, where the fuck is my wife? And Mrs. Lovett tells her, okay, she poisoned herself after that happened. Like, she was so struck with grief. And their daughter, Johanna, is now Turpin's ward, right? At this point, Todd swears revenge. He said, this man fucked up my life. My wife is dead, and now my daughter has to live with him. This man's gonna die. He says that he's going to kill the judge and the Beadle, right? Mrs. Lovett gives him his old collection of razors and convinces him, okay, you're back in town. You have this whole plan. I know you want to do this, but like, you're broke. So she basically convinces him to reopen the pie shop again. So that's exactly what he does. Meanwhile, Anthony is wandering through the streets of London when he sees this beautiful blonde girl singing out a window, and it's love at first sight. He asks the beggar woman, the same beggar woman from before, who she is, and she tells him that's Johanna, that's Judge Turpin's ward. Anthony, of course, has no idea that Johanna is Todd's daughter, right? We know this as the audience. Still, he's immediately in love with her and vows to come back for her, even after Judge Turpin and Beadle Bamford threaten him, threatened to send him off and chase him away. But he's still determined to rescue Johanna. He said, I don't give a fuck. I want that girl. Back with Todd. So he's just reopened his barbershop, and, he needs customers, right? He's been gone for 15 years. People don't know that he's good at what he does. So he and Mrs. Lovett head to the London marketplace, where there's a little boy named Tobias. Tobias is promoting this dramatic miracle elixir for baldness. He's thinking about how this magical elixir gave him these luscious, beautiful curls. And, if you buy it, you'll get these luscious, beautiful curls and blah, 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 blah. Todd and Lovett arrive, and as part of Todd's plan under his new identity, he publicly exposes the elixir as a total scam. It is piss in a bottle. Pirelli, who is Tobias' boss and the person that's the tonic, he storms out of their little cart, whatever, and he goes, why are you lying about me pissing in bottles? Who are you? I don't know who you are. Todd's like, if you think you're the best barber in town, let's prove it. Let's have a shaving contest right here, right now, in front of all these people. So 2 volunteers come up, and during the whole song, Pirelli is singing on and on about how he's the best barber alive. He's been able to shave the Pope, blah, 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 blah. Except he sings the entire time instead of shaving, which has always thrown me off. And again, I understand now, and we'll talk about why he does that. But sir, you need to cut hair because Todd wins the contest. After the contest, Beadle Bamford compliments Todd saying, wow, you're amazing. You know what? I'm going to bring Judge Turpin around for a shave later this week. And Todd is excited. I've been here for less than 24 hours and my plan is in motion. This next scene usually gets cut from most Sweeney Todd productions, but it's essential for this analysis. A few days later, we see Judge Turpin flagellating himself over his lust for Johanna. After he finishes, he convinces himself that marrying her will solve all of his problems. So over these next few days, Todd waits. He's ready to take revenge on Turpin and Beadle Bamford, let's wrap this up. But Mrs. Lovett tries to calm him down. She says, if you act too quickly, you act too recklessly, everything's gonna fall apart. Everything that you waited for, everything that you worked for is gonna be gone. So you just need to be patient, okay? He goes, okay. I'll be patient. After this, Anthony runs and tells Todd his plan. He says, hey, I'm going to ask Johanna to marry me. We're going to run away together. We're going to get away from Judge Turpin. Todd, he's like, you know what you should do since you're doing all this? You should bring Johanna here, as a refuge. And Anthony goes, oh my gosh, you're so smart. You're great. And he goes to Johanna. After that, Pirelli and Tobias come in. Mrs. Lovett takes Tobias downstairs for a pie while the 2 men go up into the barbershop and have a conversation. Pirelli drops the act. He says, I know who the hell you are. You are not Sweeney Todd. You are Benjamin Barber. I am not Adolfo Pirelli. I'm actually Daniel Higgins. I know who you are, and you embarrassed me in front of all those people. I actually need you to give me half of your profits of your new barbershop, or I will send you to Judge Turpin and you will go back to where you came from. And Todd's not having this. He kills him, stuffs him in a trunk, because he's not letting anyone get in the way of what he's trying to do. So he murders him, hides the body. Meanwhile, Johanna and Anthony are planning their escape. They're going to run away together that Saturday and sail off to London without Turpin ever knowing. At the same time, Beadle tells Judge Turpin about this fantastic new barber, Sweeney Todd. Judge Turpin told Johanna, he said, I'm going to marry you on Sunday. And Joanna's not too happy about that. Beadle Bamford tells Judge Turpin, he says, hey, I think the reason that she doesn't like you is because, you're getting a little lazy with your look. Okay, how about you shave, clean up a little bit? She gonna want you bad if you just clean up your look a little bit. And Judge Turpin says, you know what? I'm gonna do it. Mrs. Lovett goes upstairs and she sees Pirelli's dead body and she's freaking out. She does snatch Pirelli's coin purse. That's important later because, as she says, waste not, want not. It is 1846 in London. Listen, you gotta do what you gotta do. She asks Todd how he's planning to get rid of the body, but before they can figure that out, Judge Turpin shows up. And Todd say, okay, we'll figure this out. We'll figure out the dead man later. Todd quickly sits down Judge Turpin and starts shaving him. It is very intimate. It is very quiet. He's singing a very soft, sweet lullaby. But just before Todd can, he has the razor to his throat, right before he can kill him, Anthony barges in and blurts out his plan, how he's going to marry Johanna and they're going to live happily ever after, and Judge Turpin's never going to know, as Judge Turpin's right there. The judge freaks out. He storms out of the shop saying, service them well. I hope you have a great business. You gave me a good shave. I am never coming back here again. Anyways, Todd tells Anthony to leave because he is fuming. And now he's beginning to spiral. He's reminded of all the evil in London as he's going on this long, furious rant. And he says that if he can't kill the judge, he'll kill everybody else. I don't care. They just get everything they want, and I'm tired of it. He says the wicked must be punished for their sins, and everyone should be relieved of their misery and of their lives. I'm done. Everyone's dying. While he's singing and he's mad and he's, ah! Mrs. Lovett pops in, and she goes, hey, it's great, but we have a dead body upstairs. What am I supposed to do with the dead body upstairs of my shop? And Mrs. Lovett, the struggling, small business owner that she is, she has an idea. She says that they can't hide the bodies. Why not bake them? Because, they are struggling. It's hard to get meat, these days. Her pies are already terrible and no one's coming in. And it could technically solve both of their problems. Act 1 ends with a very long song of the two of them joking about it. They said, ha ha ha, we'll kill the priests, we'll kill the judges, but there's no way we'll actually do it. Like, they're joking. So Act 2 opens and Mrs. Lovett's pie shop is booming because everyone is unknowingly eating human meat. Her shop is incredibly successful and Tobias is now a waiter there. The pies are a hit. Everyone's loving it. Everyone's wanting more. Meanwhile, Todd has installed a special barber's chair that lets him kill clients and drop their bodies straight into the pie shop's bakehouse. As he's slitting their throats, he's singing about how he'll never see Johanna again. At the same time, Anthony is out searching for Johanna all over London because Judge Turpin said that he sent her away, but they don't know where. Eventually, he does find her. She's locked away in a lunatic asylum. He barely escapes after being detained by the guards, but he is running back to go tell Todd. While Todd is lost in his obsessive thoughts, thinking about revenge, Johanna, his wife, Mrs. Lovett tries to pull him into a different dream. Since the pie shop is now super successful, she tells him about her fantasy that she wants to retire together by the sea, just the two of them, get married, live peacefully, and enjoy life. And then while she's singing the song, she says, oh, we could live happily together. We can get married. We can enjoy our time together. Anthony bursts in with news. He's found Johanna. And Todd quickly thinks of a plan. He says, okay, you're going to pretend you're a wig maker and you're going to go pretend you're going to buy hair from the inmates, right? And then you're going to go rescue Johanna and then you're going to bring her back here to the safe house. Anthony agrees and he heads out. Todd writes a letter to Judge Turpin telling him Anthony's going to bring Johanna here and that he will hand Johanna over. Tobias goes to Mrs. Lovett and he says, I don't trust Sweeney Todd because men are going into his barbershop, but they're not coming out. And he seems very weird and suspicious. He's very tense. He's very frustrated. He's very angry. And that's just not someone that Tobias thinks that Mrs. Lovett should be around. And he wants to protect her, but Mrs. Lovett kind of brushes his concerns. And then he notices that she has Pirelli's coin purse in her hand. And he goes, what the hell? Where did you get that? Did he give that to you? So to distract him, she shows him the bakehouse. She tells him that he can be helpful down there. When the meat drops in the meat grinder, go down there and you just grind it, right? So they go down there. He's super excited. New role. He, seems like a promotion. She locks the door to the basement of him inside as he's doing this little job. Upstairs, Mrs. Lovett hears Beadle Bamford come in. They start singing parlor songs together. They're like little nursery rhymes until he tells her that there's been a lot of people asking about why it stinks around here and why there's this strange smoke. And I don't know if you know this, but the smell of burning human flesh is disgusting and it's not subtle. Mrs. Lovett tries to stall him, but then Sweeney Todd shows up. She reminds Beadle that, you wanted that free shave, right? Like we promised you a free shave, right? Beadle is like, I'll take a free shave and I'll let the smoke smell go. So Todd goes up to give him a shave, kills him, drops his body down in the chute in the bakehouse, while Tobias is down there. Now, Tobias is down there eating a pie, minding his business. And as he's eating the pie, he's noticing hair and fingernails in the pie. And he's like, that's kind of gross, kind of weird. And then as Beadle Bamford's body drops down, he puts two and two together. Mrs. Lovett rushes down and says, oh my God, I forgot that the kid's down there. And he's definitely figured everything out. The kid's not stupid. We got to kill the kid. Anthony arrives at the asylum to rescue Johanna. Things go sideways because she immediately recognizes him and the whole plan is exposed. In a panic, Anthony pulls out a gun that Sweeney Todd gave him, and he's going to kill the insane asylum holder, but he can't do it. I love this part. No matter what version you see of Sweeney Todd, a good version of Sweeney Todd will have Johanna grabbing that gun and pew-pewing that man immediately. She does not hesitate. Queen. The two of them escape, and as they flee, other inmates burst out of the asylum. It's chaos. They're going around London, singing about the end of the world. Meanwhile, Todd and Mrs. Lovett are searching the sewers for Tobias. At the same time, the beggar woman begins to wonder what has happened to Beadle Bamford because she saw him go in the shop, but he did not go out the shop. Johanna is now disguised as a sailor, right? They arrive at the pie shop and she's sitting there. Anthony tells her, okay, wait, I'll be back in 30 minutes. Johanna very valid, says, you said that to me months ago and I didn't see you till months later. Why do you think I should trust you right now? Like, she's clearly panicking. She's clearly upset. She says, like, I'm not leaving you. You left me for months. Like, I'm not doing that again. He comforts her and tells her it's going to be okay. We'll leave for London together. I'm never going to leave you again. Give me 20 minutes, right? And she agrees and he leaves, but she's still like very tense and paranoid. While she waits, the beggar woman enters the shop. She recognizes the room and like the place she's in, but it doesn't click for her. Todd arrives before she can piece anything together, and he's so focused on revenge and focused on the fact that Judge Turpin is coming back after months that he doesn't look at her. Like, he doesn't even notice that she's there. Again, they're arguing, but he doesn't look at her. He's telling her, go away. Like, I need you to leave. He's like, I don't have time for this. Kills her, drops her down the chute. Then Judge Turpin arrives. Todd greets him, tells him that Johanna is here, that she loves him, that like she learned her lesson in the asylum. As Todd shaves him, they redo the conversation they had from Act 1, you know? Pretty women, they have a shared taste in women. Suddenly, Turpin realizes who Sweeney Todd is, that he is Benjamin Barker. But it's too late. As soon as he goes, Benjamin Barker, slits his throat, sends him down the chute. Todd is about to leave when he remembers, oh shit, Tobias is down in the sewers. So then he hears a noise, and he turns and sees Johanna, still disguised as the sailor, hiding in her trunk. Not recognizing her, he raises his razor to kill her, but is interrupted by a scream downstairs. Todd rushes down to the bakehouse to find Mrs. Lovett screaming. Judge Turpin, who was like on the brink of death, had like grabbed onto her skirt before she like kicked him and like threw him towards the oven. And she says, okay, we're fine, let's throw the other bodies in the oven, but like, don't look at the beggar woman. And he's like, why do we not look at the beggar woman? Because a minute ago, before Todd came downstairs, she saw the beggar woman and she recognized her. Like, she knows who the beggar woman really is. Todd's like, why are you screaming? Mrs. Lovett plays it off. She says, it's fine. The judge was like half a lie, but you know, whatever. Just, we'll throw him in the oven, but just don't look at the beggar woman. He's like, okay, why do I not look at the beggar woman? That's a little suspicious. Like, she's just an old beggar woman. But then he does look at her, and he realizes the beggar woman is Lucy Barker, his wife, that he had been trying to avenge this entire time. She was alive, and he had killed her. He turns to Mrs. Lovett, and Josh Groban does such a great job on the album. I could only imagine how it is in person. Just, you lied to me. And Mrs. Lovett says, I didn't lie. I did not lie. She did poison herself, but I never said that she died. She just went mad. And she confesses, I love you. I've always loved you. I would have been a better wife than Lucy ever was. Why would you want her now that she's turned into a beggar woman who's losing her mind on the streets of London when you could have me, thriving businesswoman, with a boy who takes care of me? We could live happily together. And the two of them dance. They have their moment. It's so sweet. And Todd pretends to forgive her. And then he throws her into the oven, burning her alive as she is screaming. Now Todd is devastated. He cradles Lucy's body one last time. He's overwhelmed. There's guilt, grief, rage, and just all the way just crashing down on him. At that moment, Tobias, who's gone completely mad, because again, eating human meat and then seeing Mrs. Lovett get murdered, he comes from the sewers. He's babbling random things to himself. He picks up Sweeney Todd's razor and slits Todd's throat. And finally, the entire cast, including Todd, Lovett, and Turpin, they all return to sing one last reprise and give one final warning to the audience about the price of revenge. The end. The story of Sweeney Todd is unforgettable, not only because of its ending, but also because of its characters. This isn't a story about revenge, murder, or human meat pies. It's a story about desperation. Every major character is driven by something they need too much of or something they're willing to chase, even if it destroys them. Starting with Sweeney Todd and ending with the beggar woman, today we're going to be going through every single significant character in Sweeney Todd, outside of Fogg, who is the owner of the insane asylum, because he doesn't really have... He's necessary to the asylum sequence, but he doesn't carry enough weight for his own for a complete analysis. But everyone else, from Lovett to Pirelli to Anthony to Turpin, each character is desperate in their own way. And that desperation, paired with delusion, obsession, or both, makes the story the tragedy that it is. Sweeney Todd / Benjamin Barker. Before Sweeney Todd, he was Benjamin Barker, a devoted husband, a loving father, and a very skilled barber. He lived a peaceful life in London, known not just for his talent with a razor, but for the warmth he shared with his wife Lucy and their daughter Johanna. But as we learn in The Barber and His Wife, Barker was naive. He speaks of himself in the third person, already beginning to distance himself from the past. There was a barber and his wife, he tells Anthony. He remembers himself as a happy person with a perfect life, unable to imagine someone else wanting the life that he had. There was another man who saw that she was beautiful. That man was Judge Turpin, a corrupt official who used his power to put false charges on Barker and had him imprisoned, all in an attempt to take Lucy for himself. By the time he returns to London, 15 years later, Benjamin Barker is completely gone. He doubts anyone would remember him or Lucy. And as he recounts his story, it's clear he doesn't even know what happened to her. His voice switches between hope and despair, trying to believe she might still be alive, but bracing for the worst. When Anthony offers to help, Barker, now Sweeney Todd, responds, "Now leave me, Anthony, I beg of you." He keeps his distance, giving only vague directions about where he'll be. He's not ready to be found. He's returned not to connect with the past, but to enact revenge on the man who destroyed it. Grief, rage, and a thirst for revenge transformed him into Sweeney Todd. Whatever softness Benjamin Barker had as a husband or as a father is now buried under this brand new identity. From the start of the musical, the Ballad of Sweeney Todd tells us who this man is, not through his memories or emotions, but through his reputation. He's described as a ghost story, a figure feared and whispered about. The lyrics discuss his appearance, his skills, his methods, but never his family. Never Lucy, never Johanna. While Judge Turpin and Beadle Bamford, Sweeney Todd's intended victims, are morally corrupt, his actions appear random to the public. He is known only as a killer, and yet he's meticulous. For neatness, he deserved a nod. His victims went to their maker, aka God, impeccably shaved. There's a kind of dignity to his craft. Sweeney Todd isn't chaotic. He's precise and controlled. His violence is deliberate, never sloppy. It's part of what makes him so terrifying and so tragic. This is how the world sees him. He's not trying to reclaim his life, but is determined to destroy others. But it's one thing for the citizens of London to sing about Sweeney Todd. It's another to hear it from the man himself. No place like London gives a direct window into his psyche. His outlook is bleak from the start. London, to him, is not a place of hope. It's a great black pit filled with greed and corruption. And yet, even here, there are flickers of Benjamin Barker. He shows genuine gratitude to Anthony, the young sailor who rescued him. He's thankful, but he doesn't want a connection. His conversation with Anthony reveals just how deeply cynical he is. He speaks of those in power, of Christians who would ignore a drowning man, and that for Todd, the world is beyond saving. When a beggar woman approaches him, he shoves her aside in disgust. Off I said, to the devil with you." This moment is the audience introduction to the tragic, dramatic irony in the story. Todd remains faithful to Lucy and refuses to consider other women, but doesn't realize that beggar woman is Lucy. His tunnel vision has already begun to narrow his focus, limiting what he claims to want. For Todd, grief isn't something that he carries, it's something that he acts on. As his grief festers, it turns into obsession. Revenge becomes the only thing he can see, the only thing he can feel, and it doesn't take long for that obsession to consume him entirely. We understand Todd's desperation through Mrs. Lovett, who tells him what happened to Lucy, and poor thing. Todd listens silently, but the story, his tragedy, is playing out before him. It's the first time he hears exactly what Turpin did, how he lured Lucy to a masquerade ball, drugged her, and raped her in front of an entire crowd. And it's the first time we see Todd crack. At the end of the song, he screams, "Did no one have mercy on her?" Lucy's fate is not just another injustice in his story. It's destroying whatever hope he held on to up until this point. From this point on, everything he does is for revenge. Not justice, not healing, just the need to make someone suffer for what he's lost. In My Friends, Todd reconnects with his old razors, the only pieces of his past life he still recognizes. But these aren't just tools. They're symbols of power, of control, of the man he used to be and the vengeance he now lives for. "Speak to me, friend, whisper, I'll listen." He treats the razors as his companions. They become stand-ins for connection and identity. He's not reaching for Lucy, Johanna, or even Mrs. Lovett. He's reaching for steel. He calls them his friends, not because they comfort him, but because they give him a sense of purpose. They are what link Benjamin Barker to Sweeney Todd. The metaphor of rubies as blood shows the shift. This isn't just about killing. It's about reclaiming power through violence. Stephen Sondheim is the creator of Sweeney Todd, I forgot to mention. Sondheim even notes that the actor should make love to the razor, showing how Todd's identity is to revenge. Mrs. Lovett stands by him, trying to reach him emotionally, but it's irrelevant. His loyalty now belongs to his razors, to vengeance, and nothing else. This intimacy with his razors sets the tone for what follows. Todd is now operating from a place of single obsession, and everything else, including the people around him, doesn't matter. In Wait, Mrs. Lovett tries to reach him, telling him to be patient, calm, cautious. She talks about flowers, softness, happiness, but Todd doesn't care. He's visibly distant, emotionally checked out. He's not listening to her words. He's waiting for his chance to strike. He only agrees to her suggestion to wait because it fits the timeline of his revenge. His desperation to kill Judge Turpin is so overwhelming that logic barely factors in. He could have gone through with it immediately if he could, and he almost did. By the time Pretty Woman begins, Todd has fully used his patience as a tool. He's calm as he prepares to kill Judge Turpin mid-shave. On the surface, it's all professional. Polite conversation, a steady hand, soothing gestures. But just beneath that civility is an angry man. He uses Mrs. Lovett's lessons from Wait as a strategy because revenge tastes better when it's savored. The lullaby tone of the song Pretty Women distracts Turpin. Todd plays along with his romantic language, singing about pretty women as if they're both admiring something beautiful. Turpin speaks of desire. Todd sings of absence. His civility, my lord, and his careful demeanor only deepen the irony. He's about to kill the man in his chair, and he does it with grace. But right before he can strike, Anthony bursts in, revealing his plans to marry Johanna. Turpin leaves, and Todd's carefully contained rage erupts. Once again, revenge is denied, and his obsession only continues. Obsession has its limits, and in Johanna Quartet, we see those limits take shape. As Todd sings about Johanna, his voice is filled with longing. He's come to believe that he may never see his daughter again, and perhaps as he sings, if I never hear your voice, that's for the best. In his mind, forgetting her might be a kind of mercy, a way to spare her from the blood-soaked world that he now lives in and controls. All the while, as he sings of his daughter, Todd continues killing, one after another, but by the end of the song, something shifts. He begins to realize that the violence and the obsession haven't brought him any closer to anything. Not to Johanna, not to justice, not even to peace. When a new customer sits in the chair, Todd pauses. He sees that the man has a wife, children, a life. And for the first time, Todd doesn't kill him. He lets him go. It's a small moment, but it marks the beginning of doubt. Months have passed, and Todd is beginning to understand. This mission he's built his new identity around, this endless cycle of murder, isn't leading him anywhere. That brief doubt in Johanna Quartet might seem like a turning point, but By the Sea shows that Todd is completely checked out. While Mrs. Lovett is daydreaming about a quiet, happy life, retiring by the seaside, and getting married, just the two of them, Todd remains completely disconnected. He's not listening. He's not there. He repeats lines like anything you say over and over and over again. He's so wrapped up in revenge and what he's lost and what he still has to do that he can't even entertain her fantasy. He's still grieving Johanna, fixated on Turpin, and now he's running out of time. While Lovett is singing about domestic bliss, he's already thinking about how to change his plans and act faster and more efficiently. The Sweeney Todd we see in By the Sea is still detached. He's unraveling, slowly and quietly. He's had every chance to pull back. He could have recognized Lucy. He could have fought for Johanna. He could have walked away, but he doesn't. His obsession with killing Judge Turpin has blinded him to everything else. He's not just seeking justice anymore. He's becoming something else entirely. An epiphany was exactly the point for when he snapped. After losing his chance to kill Judge Turpin, Todd completely hits a psychological break. He rages through the shop, screaming, shaking, laughing. He's not just angry, he's unrecognizable. This isn't Benjamin Barker with a mission. This is something colder, louder, and completely unhinged. He declares that everyone deserves to die. Not just Turpin, anyone cruel. Anyone who turns their head and pretends not to see. And after all that rage is something even more devastating. Grief. This is a man who's lost his wife, his daughter, and any hopes of having something human again. And if he can't have love or peace, then nobody gets to. He lashes out at Mrs. Lovett. I had him, as if it were her fault that he failed. And maybe it is, a little. But at that moment, she was no longer his partner. She's a witness. He threatens her, and whether it's fear, it's love, or both, she still stays. Todd's logic shifts entirely. If life is suffering, then death is mercy. If the world is broken, then it needs to be cut clean. He starts performing for the audience, turning his madness into twisted theater. He says he feels joy, but it's hollow and bitter. This is the moment where Benjamin Barker fully dies. What's left is Sweeney Todd, and Sweeney Todd is nothing but vengeance. And then Mrs. Lovett has an idea. If the business is struggling and bodies are going to be piling up above her pie shop anyways, why not use them? At first, Todd is horrified, but he gets on board. In A Little Priest, we watch him shift from disturbed to intrigued, and then into amused. For the first time, he compliments her. How I lived without you my whole life, I never know. It's morbid, it's playful, and it's the first time they feel like true partners. He calls her love. They dance, they joke about turning society's worst into something helpful. Priests, judges, poets, the rich, powerful, no one is safe. Still, even as he joins in Lovett's jokes, Todd still never loses focus. He reminds her that Turpin and the Beadle are still the end goal. This new plan doesn't change anything. The next song, God That's Good, shows the pie shop thriving. Customers line up, Mrs. Lovett is glowing, but Todd is falling apart. He's paranoid, twitchy, anxious, and entirely on edge. Even in the middle of all the success, he's not celebrating. He's fixated on the judge and the Beadle, watching the door, checking the streets, making sure he doesn't miss his chance again. Lovett, of course, is trying to get closer. She reassures and tries to soothe him, but he doesn't hear her. She's not his partner anymore, at least not in his mind. She's just part of the operation. He doesn't laugh with her, he doesn't smile, he doesn't even see her at times. Because none of this, the money, the praise, the pies, means anything to him. If Turpin isn't dead, then nothing is finished. By the time we get to the letter, months have passed. He's been killing for months, spiraling deeper and deeper into violence, and none of it has gotten him any closer to what he wants. Turpin is still alive, Johanna is still out of reach, and at this point he is desperate. So when Anthony shows up with news that he's found Johanna and plans to rescue her, Todd doesn't think, thank God my daughter is safe. He thinks this is it. This is my chance. He immediately writes that letter to Judge Turpin, using Anthony's plan as bait. The tone is mockingly polite and overly formal. There's a lot of fake respect in it, and it's designed to flatter Judge Turpin's ego. He portrays Anthony as a dishonorable villain and concludes with, she will be waiting. At this point, Todd isn't just angry, he's exhausted. He's been doing this for so long and still feels no closer to peace. Maybe it's the mission, maybe it's Lovett, maybe it's because he doesn't know if there's anything human left in him for him to return to. All we know is that this is someone who's entirely lost himself to the plan, and in the end of all of it, the obsession and the revenge all catches up to him. In the final sequence, Todd is laser focused because now Turpin is coming. The man he's waited years to destroy is finally within reach. When the beggar woman stumbles in, it throws a wrench into his plan. What is this old woman doing here? He doesn't even hesitate, kills her instantly without even realizing, without even looking to see that it's Lucy, the very woman he spent an entire show trying to avenge. He's so lost in his mission that he murders her without a second thought. Then Turpin arrives. Todd shaves him. They sing Pretty Women together again. It's the beautiful reprise, and Turpin has no idea what's coming. And right before the final blow, the moment he's been living for finally happens. Turpin is gone. It's done. It's over. But it's not a victory. It's devastation. When he goes into the bakehouse, he sees Lucy, really sees her, and it hits him. He killed her. She was alive. She was right there in front of him the entire time. And in his obsession, he took her from himself all over again. His rage turns to Lovett. She didn't technically lie. She said Lucy took the poison, but not that she died. And that's enough for Todd. He feels betrayed. And at that moment, he becomes judge, jury, and executioner all over again. He dances with Lovett in this horrifying display of forgiveness and then throws her into the oven. He cradles Lucy's body, finally still. And then Tobias returns. This boy, who Todd and Lovett had manipulated, traumatized, and dragged into their violence, picks up the razor and kills Sweeney Todd. And Todd doesn't fight back. He doesn't scream. He doesn't run. Because what's left? The person he was doing this for is no longer here. The daughter he was trying to protect is gone. Sweeney Todd's story is a tragedy not because he was evil, but because he was human. What starts as grief turns into obsession. What begins as justice turns into destruction. And by the end, nothing remains. Not the man, not the mission, or even the people he once claimed to love. This is where the show hits the hardest. It blurs the line between victim and villain. Todd is both. A man broken by a corrupt system, twisted by trauma, and consumed by a rage that he can no longer control. His obsession doesn't just take down his enemies, it eats him alive. He becomes the very thing he was fighting against. The Ballad of Sweeney Todd ends the musical, and the entire company returns to warn us again, not just about Todd, but about the world that created him. To seek revenge may lead to hell, but everyone does it and seldom as well. It's not just about one man with a razor. It's about what happens when pain turns into purpose, when justice is turned into desperation, when someone is pushed so far that revenge becomes the only thing that feels real. Even A Little Priest, with all its satire and wit, is filled with resentment of the upper class. Those above will serve those down below. Isn't just a joke. It's a cry from the gutter. Todd isn't just getting even. He's trying to flip the entire system upside down. Even that revolution falls apart under the weight of his obsession. Sweeney Todd is a man who lost everything. Instead of healing, he turned that loss into a weapon. In the end, he died by it too. Nellie Lovett. Fun facts, Mrs. Lovett is the biggest reason I've thought of this thesis. Because Mrs. Lovett is the most desperate and delusional of all of them. But I understand her. Besides Sweeney Todd, no character in the story carries more weight or delusion than Mrs. Nellie Lovett. A widow scraping by in a crumbling meat pie shop, she opens the show not with a villain monologue or a tragic backstory, but with flour and an apron and an iconic song. She's not evil, she is exhausted, and she's just tired of being alone. In The Worst Pies in London, we meet Mrs. Lovett. She's loud, fast-talking, and completely alone. She's rambling about meat, business, and how terrible her pies are, and she's not exaggerating for charm. She genuinely believes it. She constantly degrades herself and her product, embodying a version of womanhood that's been beaten down by poverty, loneliness, and survival. She's a businesswoman, yes, but one businesswoman with no business. When Todd first walks in, her initial reaction is one of panic. You gave me such a fright. I thought you was a ghost. She hasn't seen another soul in who knows how long. And the man sitting in front of her, it's not just anyone, it's Benjamin Barker. She sees this as a second chance romance. Suddenly, she's not just a widow in a failing shop. She's someone with potential. Her monologue is filled with pleas for sympathy, discussing how hard things are, how alone she feels, and how unfair the world has been. But underneath all of that, she's calculated. She doesn't offer Todd a pie out of generosity. She wants him to see her, to need her. And when she said she'd never stoop as low as to put pussies in her pies, it sounds like a boundary. But we all know what's coming. She's already setting up the justification she'll later abandon without hesitation. This scene doesn't just introduce Mrs. Lovett's quirks. It introduces her hunger, not for food, but for affection, relevance, and survival. She's both pathetic and dangerous. And the more we listen, the more we realize everything about her is a little bit crooked, including the truth. Mrs. Lovett tells Sweeney the story of what happened to Lucy, and it's here that her performance begins. She presents herself as a rescuer, saying, "Oh, I tried to stop her," though she likely only heard the story through gossip. Lovett loves to talk. We saw it in The Worst Pies in London, and it continues here in Poor Thing, except now her words are shaping not just the narrative, but Todd's future. She tells Lucy's tragedy, the judge's scheme, the rape, and the aftermath. There's pity in the repeated phrase, poor thing, but there's also mockery and judgment. It's not just what she says, but it's how she says it. Lovett sings about Lucy's beauty with a kind of backhanded compliment, calling her naive. And when she says Lucy had her chance for the moon on a string, it sounds like jealousy. Lucy chose love over security, over status. Lovett would have chosen differently. She would have been different. Her comments reveal class-based tension, a resentment that Lucy, who had love and lost it, is now pitied, while Lovett, who's been scraping by alone, is ignored. And that resentment bleeds into how she frames Lucy's fate. She blames Lucy for not moving on, for not adapting, for not being practical. She wouldn't budge. The implication is clear. Lucy could have saved herself if she'd just been more like Lovett. And then there's the line, and she was beautiful. The glimpse of what Lovett wanted. She's not just telling a story to be kind. She sees herself as the better match for Benjamin Barker, the one who would have made the right choices, the one who could if given the chance. What's most haunting about the song is that ghosts don't haunt Mrs. Lovett. She's haunted by the attic room above her shop, by her guilt, by her own choices, her own belief that she could have had something better if Lucy had just gotten out of the way. My Friends is an entirely one-sided song. This is Todd's love song to his razors. These tools are the only things he shows affection for, the only friends he greets with warmth. And right beside him, trying to slip into that moment, is Mrs. Lovett. She hums along, she sings a few lines, she tries to make herself part of the scene, but the song isn't about her. It never was. Todd doesn't even really acknowledge her presence. Still, Mrs. Lovett inserts herself because she needs to be needed. If she can't be the love of his life, maybe she can be the one who helps him get revenge. She tells him Lucy poisoned herself. The judge took Johanna. She's not lying, not exactly, but she's just telling just enough of the truth to push him into the direction that she wants. If Todd is going to be the man who takes revenge, then Lovett can be the woman who stands beside him while he does it. She even suggests that he become a barber again. A practical idea, sure, but it's also romantic in her mind. It's a way of bringing back the man she fell for, a way to pull him back into a life and into a version of himself where she might still have a chance. Then she says, silver's good enough for me. She knows she's not his first choice. She knows she'll never be Lucy, never be Johanna, never even be those blades he's singing to, but she's willing to settle for second, whatever it takes to keep him close. She believes that if she inserts herself into his mission, if she supports his pain, if she aligns her wants with his, maybe, just maybe, he'll finally see her. Later, in Wade, Lovett isn't just calming Todd down, she's taking control. The moment he starts to spiral, she steps in with a lullaby, acting like the one who has the answers, the one who sees the bigger picture. She positions herself as the clever one, the person who knows best. She's not stopping him for moral reasons. She's not trying to prevent violence. She just knows that acting too soon could ruin everything. So she slows him down, not to save lives, but to protect her version of the future, their future. She starts painting that picture, daisies, gillyflowers, peace, contentment, a better life, with her. She uses softness to get what she wants. The flower imagery isn't random. It's emotional bait. Daisies for new beginnings, gillyflowers for domestic bliss. If he listens to her, if he waits, he'll get all of that. He'll get a peaceful life, and more importantly, he'll get her. She even starts subtly shaping the narrative around Anthony. If he's not helpful and doesn't help them get what they want, he can go. She never says it outright, but the implication is clear. Anyone who doesn't serve the plan is expendable. She frames all of this as love, as support. She casts herself as the loyal partner who just wants what's best for him. But what she wants is to keep control of him, of the business, and of the fantasy. With the business finally booming and her position next to Todd more secure than ever, we see the dreams come to full fruition. Lovett paints a vivid picture of the life she believes they could have. A little seaside cottage, cozy blankets, maybe a few visitors, definitely a marriage. It's domestic, romantic, and different from the reality that they're living in right now. She's not concerned with the murders anymore. She's concerned with which wallpaper best suits their imaginary home. In this song, Tobias has no part of her delusion. Her world now revolves entirely around Todd, not just being near him, but having him. Even in her fantasy, she allows him to have his darkness. If he gets bored at the beach, he can kill a few people, no big deal. Murder is just another part of their life together. And what's wild is how her moral compass has changed throughout the musical. Remember when she gagged at the idea of using cats in her pies? Now she's joking about seagulls and beachgoers. Her values are as willing to change as they need to be, as long as the outcome keeps her by his side. This is her dream, and she sings it like she's just waiting for it to come true. All Todd has to do is stop resisting. All he has to do is say yes. But delusion doesn't stay harmless forever. At a certain point, Lovett stops dreaming about a future with Todd and starts building one, regardless of the cost. She's no longer just reacting to Todd's obsession. She's feeding it, steering it, benefiting from it. If her earlier lives were about protecting her fantasy, now they're about constructing a whole life out of it. It starts small, harmless even. At the marketplace, when Todd and Lovett come across Tobias selling Pirelli's miracle elixir, Lovett jumps right into the game. She insults the product with a single offhanded comment, "Wouldn't touch that if I were you, dear," and immediately sways the crowd. She's not yelling, she's not scheming out loud, she's using tone, timing, and the town's boredom to turn public opinion. She doesn't just back Todd, she sets him up to win. She plays the crowd, discredits Tobias, and helps position Todd as the superior barber. This isn't about loyalty, it's about control and reputation. Then, almost effortlessly, Tobias becomes part of the equation, another tool in her plan. She doesn't know it yet, but this little moment, this push in the marketplace, is the start of something much bigger. Her lies are about to start having consequences, real ones. Up until now, Lovett has been able to manage Todd, redirect him, soothe him, and slow him down when necessary. But in an epiphany, all of that control shatters. Todd explodes in a full-blown psychological break. He screams, he rages, he threatens, and for the first time, Lovett is genuinely scared. She tries to calm him down, just like she did in Wait, but this time it doesn't work. He's unreachable. Whatever was left of Benjamin Barker is slipping fast, and what's emerging is something darker and more dangerous. And it's here that Lovett has to make a choice. If she wants to tether herself to this man, she has to adapt, fast. Because what she's seeing now isn't just grief or revenge. It's an obsession that can't be stopped, not even by her. So she doesn't push back. She offers a solution. Todd is spiraling and bloodthirsty, and rather than run or plead, Lovett meets him where he is. She quickly shifts the conversation from panic to practicality. That's all very well. What are we going to do about him? And that's when she proposes it. The plan, the pies, the beginning of their gruesome little empire. At first, she prevents it like a joke. You know me, bright ideas just pop into me head. She's still easing herself into it, but the deeper the conversation goes, the more confident she becomes. She realizes this isn't just about Todd's obsession anymore, it's about opportunity. She's found a way to make herself indispensable. The business is failing, she's tired of scraping by, and now here's a way to fix all of it. The plan feeds Todd's rage and her shop. Everyone wins, except, the people getting baked into the pies. What's fascinating is how she uses humor to bridge the gap between horror and logic. She flirts, she teases, she dances with him. She makes the whole thing feel like a twisted romantic comedy. And when Todd calls her love, she glows. Because for a moment, they are a team, a couple, a unit. Lovett isn't just indulging Todd. She's drawing from her frustrations. The system has also failed her. And so now she's going to eat it alive. In God That's Good, the horror is no longer a secret. The pies are made of people. And Lovett is not only okay with it, she's profiting off of it. She's running the show like a businesswoman who's finally figured it out. She even uses gossip to her advantage, creating curiosity, shaping the brand, and keeping suspicions low while driving sales high. But she's not just managing the store. She's managing Todd and Toby and the Berg woman. Everything and everyone. She's still playing house, still clinging to the idea that she and Todd are a team. Even as he grows more paranoid, more impatient, and more distant, he's spiraling, and she's trying to keep him steady without scaring him off. She's doting, and she's still mothering and still begging, quietly, for stability. Her care for Toby in this number feels real. She feeds him, protects him, and pulls him close when things get tense. However, it also represents another layer of control. He's a thread in the fantasy, and if he unravels, so does everything else. And then there's the beggar woman. She knows who the woman is. She keeps her away for a reason. Whether it's fear, guilt, or belief that Lucy somehow deserved her fate, Lovett keeps her out, because letting her in would ruin the illusion that she has built. At this point, Lovett believes she solved it. Everything she's complained about in the worst pies in London, the shop is complete. Her life is full, but Todd isn't. And that's the problem. Because no matter how much she feeds him, his hunger isn't going to go away. When Tobias starts asking questions, she doesn't meet him with honesty. She meets him with the same tools she's used all along: charm, distraction, and just enough affection to keep him close. Only this time, it's not just manipulation, it's survival. Because even Lovett knows the story she's built is beginning to collapse. This is the moment where everything Lovett's been holding together starts to slip. Toby, the one person who's consistently shown her affection without an agenda, begins to see the cracks. He senses something is wrong. He doesn't know the whole truth, but he knows enough. And what's terrifying for Mrs. Lovett is that he's right. Toby sings out of love, out of fear. He's trying to protect her from something he doesn't fully understand. Lovett calls him a silly child, brushing off his concern. She doesn't argue, she doesn't get defensive, but she redirects. She soothes. She sings to him a lullaby, the same way she had calmed Todd earlier. But this time it's not about stalling violence. It's about suppressing a truth that she can't afford to let out. She only calls him Toby once in the entire number, and it's deliberate. A little anchor of affection, just enough to keep him calm. She's not lying to his face. She's lying with tone, with trust, and he falls for it, just for a moment. What makes the scene so tragic is how real the love feels. Toby genuinely cares for her. He's scared. He wants to protect her. And Mrs. Lovett, she returns that love just enough to use it. Because the second he becomes a threat to the dream, to the shop, to Todd, to the life that she built and is building, he becomes expendable. That is the cost of her delusion. She's willing to sacrifice the one person who sees her with warmth, because control, to Mrs. Lovett, has always mattered more than connection. The moment she tells Todd that Toby knows what they've been doing is the moment she gives up on every delusion she's maintained. Her first instinct isn't to reassure or protect the boy who's loved her. It's to eliminate him. And so, she stalks the bakehouse, softly repeating the lyric, "Nothing's gonna harm you." It's no longer a lullaby. It's a warning and a threat, and it's chilling. For so long, Lovett has balanced Todd's rage, Toby's loyalty, and the fantasies she's been carefully curating. But when Todd discovers the beggarwoman's true identity, Lucy, his wife, everything that Lovett has been balancing is gone. Todd sees her, really sees her, for the first time, not as the clever partner or doting companion, but as the architect to his greatest mistake. And Lovett, once so composed, begins to crack. She tries everything. Flattery, nostalgia, promises of that seaside life. She reaches for by the sea like a life raft, singing their dreams back to him as if she might still save her. But it's too late. The woman who once took pride in cleverness is now cornered, terrified, and begging for her life. In her final moments, she finally speaks the truth she's been dodging all along. I was only thinking of you. It's not about safety or timing or the business. It never was. It's about love. Her delusion was never just about escaping poverty or becoming respectable. It was the belief that if she tried hard enough, manipulated well enough, loved fiercely enough, he would love her back. She tells Todd that she would have been a better wife. If Lucy was naive, Lovett was practical. If Lucy vanished, Lovett stayed. She's offering Todd a version of the past where she was always the one waiting for him. This moment completes her descent. The woman who once laughed off her circumstances with wit and survival is now entirely undone by the love she tried to force into existence. Mrs. Lovett's tragedy isn't that she died, it's that she died believing the fantasy she built could ever become real. She believed that she could control the chaos. With the right story, the right smile, the right lie, she could survive it all and end up loved, successful, and secure. But Lovett was playing a game with only one player. She misjudged Todd, thinking his pain could be softened, redirected, and shaped into something that she could live with. What she failed and refused to see was that Todd was never hers to mold. His obsession ran deeper than hers, and his end game was never a seaside cottage. It was vengeance, and when the truth surfaced, he didn't hesitate to kill her. Lovett thought she was the clever one. She turned bodies into profits, silence into strategy, and affection into leverage. But for survival at the cost of humanity isn't survival. She didn't become a monster overnight. She became one slowly, disguising obsession as devotion and self-interest as love. And in the end, the delusion was mutual, and that's what killed Mrs. Nellie Lovett. Judge Turpin. Judge Turpin isn't just a villain. He's the kind of man whose title grants him righteousness by default. But behind the robe is a man riddled with hypocrisy, guilt, and obsessive control. He's one of the most dangerous people in the story because he makes his worst impulses look like justice. He's the reason Benjamin Barker lost everything. In The Barber and His Wife, we begin to see just how far Turpin will go to get what he wants. His presence hangs over every line, but at its center isn't just a man's fall from grace, it's another man's rise in power. Turpin doesn't sing, but his presence is everywhere. The song recounts how Turpin used the full weight of the law to destroy Benjamin Barker's life, not out of justice, but out of desire. He saw Lucy, Barker's wife, and decided that she should be his. So he faked a crime, sentenced Barker to life, and left Lucy alone and vulnerable with a child. That's his delusion, that power and time will make his desires acceptable. If he's patient, Lucy will choose him. Turpin ruins 3 lives without any remorse, convincing himself the law is on his side because he is the law. His desperation isn't emotional, it's systematic. Mrs. Lovett's recounting of Lucy's fate in Poor Thing doesn't just add context. Here, the judge is no longer a distant manipulator. He's a predator, plain and simple. While extending his kindness, he isolates Lucy, offering her sanctuary that turns out to be a trap. She's brought to a masquerade, drugged and raped, not by a criminal, but by the very man meant to uphold the law. What's disturbing is not just the act itself, but how quickly society turns it into a rumor. Turpin doesn't suffer. He doesn't answer to anyone. Instead, he turns the event into his fantasy, one in which Lucy's refusal was temporary, and Johanna can be shaped into someone more compliant. He sees Johanna not as a daughter, but as a second chance to fulfill what Lucy denied him. Turpin's delusion doesn't stop at what he's done. It twists into a justification for what he still wants. The trauma he inflicted on Lucy doesn't lead to reflection or remorse. Instead, he rewrites the narrative in his mind, convincing himself that love, control, and power can all coexist under the idea of righteousness. Turpin's cruelty in Poor Thing marks only the beginning of his descent. After Mrs. Lovett narrates Lucy's tragedy, the show continues to unfold its unraveling behind the scenes. We learn he's taken Johanna as his ward, raising her in confinement. But as the plot grows through Antony's discovery of Johanna and Todd's growing paranoia, what becomes clear is that the judge's obsession has never gone away. His power protects him, but it also isolates him, feeding a growing desperation to justify his desires. This all culminates in one of the most jarring moments of the show. While looking at Johanna through her doorframe, Turpin strips off his robes and kneels, bare-chested, bent over in self-flagellation, and prays, "Mea culpa, mea maxima culpa." He hurts himself, not to stop desiring Johanna, but to convince himself that desire can be made holy if he punishes himself enough, that if he weeps hard enough, God will forgive him for what he's about to do, and what he does while looking at her through the doorframe. Turpin isn't trying to suppress his feelings, he's trying to purify them. He wants to make Johanna his wife, not just to legitimize his desire, but to erase the boundary between guardian and lover. This is the root of his obsession, not just wanting Johanna, but believing he has earned her, that her beauty and obedience are a reward for his suffering. He spies on her, lusts after her, finishes at the sight of her, and then convinces himself that it is she who must be saved from the world, not from him. This isn't about love. It never was. It's about ownership and about reshaping reality around his obsession. He doesn't see Johanna. He considers her a symbol of innocence, of redemption, of something he could take and keep, never to be punished for. His guilt isn't real. It's performative. And it's a performance, the one that makes him feel righteous while spiraling deeper into abuse that makes him so terrifying. This song in the scene is often cut from Sweeney Todd productions, and it's not hard to see why. Mea culpa is incredibly uncomfortable in a way that even the bloodiest moments of the show aren't. There's no gore, there's no razors, no screaming, just a man alone wrestling with himself, literally, or at least performing that struggle to an audience. It's uncomfortable to listen to, let alone watch. Ironically, since we discussed in the last video, both Mea culpa and Hellfire from Hunchback of Notre Dame have many parallels to each other. Both involve a man of power, particularly religious power, who weaponizes religion to justify his lust. Both scenes use the same terrifying logic. I'm only doing this because she made me want her. Turpin isn't seeking redemption. He's asking God to bless his intentions, to turn something predatory into something sanctified. And that's why this song matters. Even though it's cut, I think it should be included whenever it is performed. It strips away any respectable facade that Judge Turpin hides from most of the show. It makes us sit with his true disgusting nature. He believes through the song that his desires are moral because he's been punished, and therefore it is earned. Keeping this thing forces the audience to confront not just what he does, but why he believes he has the right to do it. Turpin's descent into obsession doesn't just warp his view of Johanna, it warps the entire understanding of what love even is. Ladies and Their Sensitivities captures that perfectly as well. Encouraged by Beadle Bamford, Turpin decides he needs to change his appearance to win Johanna over. Get a good shave and a cleaner look, because in his mind, that's all it takes. Ladies and Their Sensitivities, Beadle insists, have a fragile sensibility. He might as well be saying women are simple. Make yourself look good and they'll fall into place. Turpin takes this advice to heart because it reinforces the delusion that he's already clinging to, that this isn't an obsession, it's courtship, that Johanna is not a person with agency, but a prize that needs to be won over. It's disturbing, not because of the entitlement, but because of how deeply he believes it. He doesn't question the morality of marrying the ward he's raised since childhood. He doesn't see the power imbalance or the trauma. He sees an object of desire and convinces himself that if he looks the part, Johanna will bow to his every will. In this moment, we're not just seeing obsession. We're seeing a man fully consumed by his narrative, one in which power justifies love and control can be mistaken for care. Turpin's power has always protected him. A judge wielding absolute power has acted without restraint, twisting morality to fit his desires and concealing his self-righteous obsession. He has destroyed the lives of Sweeney Todd, Lucy, Johanna, and quite possibly many others whose stories that we do not know. And without realizing it, he's stepping into the trap laid out by a man that he wronged. His descent unfolds through Pretty Women and its haunting reprise in the final sequence. The first time we hear it, it's a duet between Turpin and Todd. Turpin is relaxed, enjoying a shave and speaking of beauty, unaware that the man holding the razor is Benjamin Barker. It's a moment of deep irony. Two men sharing harmonies, both obsessing over the same woman. For Turpin, it's romantic. For Todd, it's seething hatred. What makes this moment even more chilling is Turpin's view of women. They are not people to him. They are symbols of purity, of control, of second chances. Pretty women are to be trimmed, admired, and possessed. His lyrics paint them as ethereal, obedient, vanishing only to stay in the minds of men. He doesn't love Johanna, he desires her, just as he once did with Lucy. Similarly to Lucy, Johanna serves as an avenue for Judge Turpin to mask his lust as moral, while simultaneously offering him a chance at redemption. By the time the final sequence arrives, the song returns, but with consequences. Todd lures Turpin in with flattery and lies. She speaks only of you, he says, manipulating Turpin's delusion and desperation. His obsession consumes Turpin. He is so convinced of his righteousness that he doesn't think logically. He believes the fantasy, not the danger. Their duet continues, but now both men are on the edge for different reasons. Todd is fresh off of murdering the beggarwoman, delusional and desperate not to lose his moment, and Turpin, blind with entitlement, is fixated on Johanna and believes he's being rewarded for his patience. Even when Todd's behavior goes strange, he doesn't suspect the truth until it's far too late. During their conversation, the moment Todd reveals his proper name, Benjamin Barker, the harmony ends. Justice, twisted and delayed, is delivered not by the courts, but by the man Turpin condemned years ago. The system that Turpin once manipulated to destroy others has now, finally, killed him. Judge Turpin is a reminder of what happens when power goes unchecked. A man convinced that his position is enough to justify anything he wants. He uses the law to mask his desires while destroying the lives of others. Lucy, Johanna, Benjamin Barker, and so many all fall victim to his obsession and control. And he never stops to think that he might be in the wrong. What makes Turpin so terrifying isn't what he does, it's how easily he does it, how the world around him lets it happen. He believes that if he wants something, he can get it, that if he prays hard enough, beats himself long enough, he eventually can get anything he wants. That's not guilt, it's delusion. And it's that delusion that destroys him. He dies at the hands of the very man he sentenced, never realizing until the last second that it was his fault. Judge Turpin is a cautionary tale, not just about evil, but about the kind of evil that's allowed to look respectable. He's what happens when the systems built to protect are handed over to men who think they're untouchable. And even in the world of Sweeney Todd, they don't get out alive. Beadle Bamford. Beadle Bamford is Judge Turpin's loyal right-hand man. He is cheerful, composed, and a little too eager to please. He isn't driven by lust or revenge like other characters, but by loyalty to power and a desperate need to maintain his place. He's not calling the shots, but he makes sure they're carried out, no matter how corrupt or violent they are. What makes Bamford so unsettling isn't his rage or revenge, it's the willingness with which he follows orders. He doesn't just look away from the abuse, he enables it, and that makes him just as guilty as Judge Turpin. Beadle Bamford's desperation doesn't come from a personal obsession, it comes from a need to serve, to belong, and to be useful. He isn't chasing revenge or love, he's chasing approval. His loyalty to Turpin isn't about friendship or belief in justice, it's about maintaining his status within the system. In Poor Thing, he's the one who goes to Lucy. He delivers Turpin's false apology, pretending the judge feels sorry for what he's done. We observe how easily he inserts himself and how comfortably he nudges Turpin towards what he wants, a pattern that is repeated. Bamford doesn't need to get his hands dirty. He sets the stage and lets the abuse unfold. Bamford doesn't question Turpin's desire to marry Johanna. When Turpin mentions that Johanna isn't exactly thrilled about the idea, Bamford doesn't stop to consider her feelings or her autonomy. In Ladies and Their Sensitivities, his solution isn't to give him empathy or restraint. It's to polish up the judge's image. Ladies, my lord, are weak, he says. They have a fragile sensibility. It's his version of relationship advice. Get a good shave, look respectable, and Johanna will bow to your every will. As if she's just a delicate object waiting to be won over by grooming and charm. The moment isn't just tone deaf, it's revealing. Bamford sees women not as people with agency, but as puzzles to be solved through appearance and manipulation. His whole worldview is transactional. If you look the part and you play by the rules of status, you deserve what you want, including someone like Johanna. Bamford's ending did not involve him spiraling, exploding, or merely because of the consequences of his actions. His downfall is quieter, and that's precisely what makes it so fitting. In his final scene, he arrives at Mrs. Lovett's pie shop to conduct a health inspection after receiving complaints. He's cautious, but still operating in full Beadle mode, secure, polite, and very confident in his authority. And when Mrs. Lovett and Sweeney Todd offer him a free shave for his silence on the smells coming from the pie shop, he takes it. No questions. Even he can't resist a little pampering when it suits him. There's something eerie in how relaxed he is singing parlor songs, while being at the center of the violence he's helped protect. The Beadle isn't stupid, but he's arrogant. He believes that being part of the system keeps him safe from its consequences, and that's where he's wrong. Todd doesn't kill him because of a personal grudge. He kills him because the Beadle is part of the machine. Because the polite, obedient bureaucrats are just as responsible as the men who pull the trigger. Beadle Bamford is what happens when someone decides that being useful is more important than being good. He doesn't commit the crimes himself, but he stands next to the man who does, carries out his orders, and smiles while he's doing so. He's not the embodiment of Turpin's worst impulses, but he's the front man. He frames violence as strategy, abuse as etiquette, and power as inevitability. You don't have to be the one pulling the strings to be part of the problem. Bamford doesn't initiate violence. He's not driven by lust, revenge, or even hate. His obsession is with order, control, and staying close to power. He doesn't protect Johanna, doesn't stop Turpin, doesn't think twice. Because thinking twice might mean losing his position, and that's a line he never wants to cross. Bamford's story, just like Turpin, is a reminder that watching something awful happen and doing nothing is just as bad as the perpetrator doing the harm. He played the part, stayed useful, thought that would make him safe, but when the system collapsed, he went down with it. Just like Turpin, Bamford is another cautionary tale, one that is very reflective of specific individuals who believe that enabling that evil will allow them to be safe and free from consequences, that being neutral is a choice. And when you make that choice, when you help cover up the harm, defend it, or explain it away, you are just as guilty as the one committed it. Bamford never thought he'd pay for what he did, but he did. Because no matter how polite your facade may be, being complicit doesn't make you safe. It just makes you next. Johanna Barker. Johanna Barker is the girl in the window. She is seen but not heard, raised entirely under someone else's control. As Judge Turpin's ward, she's been confined, monitored, and molded into a symbol of purity and obedience. Her life isn't her own. It's controlled, curated, and limited to what she can observe through the bars of her window. She's both a daughter and a possession, and beneath her forced silence is a desperate need to understand her place in a world built entirely around her containment. In Greenfinch and Linenbird, she sings not just to the birds, but with them, searching for understanding. She doesn't ask how to fly, she asks how to sing, because escape feels impossible, but maybe expression is still within reach. The birds are her only company, and like her, they're caged. She doesn't ask how to break free, she asks how to endure. Teach me to be more adaptive, she pleads. Not rebellious, not brave, just adaptive. Because when freedom feels too far away, survival becomes its own type of rebellion. The birds mirror her captivity, and yet they sing. And she doesn't understand how. How can you jubilate singing in cages? She asks, frustrated not just by her circumstances, but by her inability to find peace within them. The song is gentle, but it's full of questions that have no easy answers. How do you survive captivity without letting it define you? How do you hold on to yourself when the world only values your silence? This is where Johanna's story begins, not as a love interest, not as a prize to be rescued, but as a girl trying to reclaim her agency in a world that never expected her to have any. Johanna's obsession isn't with Anthony, it's with escape. Her fixation on freedom is so consuming that when someone finally looks at her with kindness and no agenda, she immediately clings to him. Anthony isn't just a man. He's the first person who sees her as something other than property. That's the appeal. Not romance, not chemistry, just the possibility of being seen and of believing. In Kiss Me, we see how badly Johanna wants to believe in a rescue. She's visibly unwell from years of psychological abuse, paranoid about Turpin, and quick to panic. When Anthony proposes an escape plan, she doesn't hesitate. She doesn't even know his name yet, but she still says yes. That moment isn't about love, it's about survival. There's a kind of humor and urgency to how she prepares to leave. She'll bring only a token from my mother. It's a heartbreaking detail, one of the only personal choices she's been allowed to make. The idea of a wedding, of starting over, is a fantasy, but it's all she has. And by the time we reach the Johanna quartet in the second half of the musical, that fantasy is her lifeline. She repeats the plan over and over and over again. It's not about Anthony anymore. It's about clinging to the last shred of hope that she has. She's isolated in that song and barely holding on. But she refuses to let go of that idea that someone will come back to her, that she can leave, that she's still worth saving. In both these songs, Johanna is trying to find control in a world where she has none. Johanna mirrors the classic fairy tale heroine, the beautiful, quiet girl locked away, waiting for a man to find her, fall in love at first sight, and carry her to freedom. And on the surface, it feels like that's what's happening. Anthony sees her through a window, declares his love, and builds an entire escape plot around her. It's romantic in a way a lot of old stories are romantic, sweeping, fast, and shallow. But the longer we sit with it, the more uncomfortable it becomes, because this isn't a fairy tale, it's a story about trauma, and Johanna isn't rescued, she's relocated. Her relationship with Anthony, while sweet in theory, reflects a more profound delusion, that love is the same thing as freedom. Years of captivity don't vanish just because someone opens a door. And the truth is, Anthony doesn't know her. He's fallen in love with an idea that she's been forced to become. That's not her fault, but it's not love either. After all the delusions and dependencies, we finally see Johanna make a choice. By the time we reach that final sequence, Johanna has been through it all: imprisonment, betrayal, and institutional abuse. But then something happens. Anthony, the man who swore to protect her, hesitates. He can't bring himself to hurt someone. Johanna doesn't share that hesitation. When it's her freedom on the line, she kills fog without blinking. It's a moment that's easy to overlook, but it tells us as the audience everything we need to know. She has held on to the idea of freedom for so long that she refuses to let anything take it from her again. Antony may have introduced her to the concept of escape, but she's the one who makes sure that it happened. This is where Johanna's desperation and delusion transforms. She's not the same girl in the window. She's not just escaping now. She's choosing. She doesn't leave with Todd, even though he's her father, because he doesn't see her, doesn't realize that it's her underneath the sailor's clothes. Johanna's story doesn't end in death or dramatic transformation. It ends with survival. Her trauma doesn't disappear. Her freedom doesn't mean she's healed, but she's out. She's alive, and she's finally beginning to make her own choices. Johanna Barker's story is a reflection of how deeply women can be shaped and saddened by the systems around them and how long it takes to find your voice in a world that never wanted to hear it. She may get a happy ending with Antony. She may grow, learn to love, and reclaim the life she was never meant to have. However, securing such a future like that is challenging, because Johanna's story was never about finding love. It was about refusing to stay caged. Anthony Hope. Ironic. Anthony Hope enters the musical as something so different from the world he's entering. He is kind, open-hearted, and optimistic. A young sailor just returning to London, he immediately stands out for his belief in beauty, his capacity for love, and his unwavering hope. He doesn't walk into the story carrying a grudge or a wound. He walks in with a smile and offers friendship to those he encounters. Anthony is a rare exception in a story full of lost trauma and vengeance. In no place like London, Anthony marvels at the world around him. His voice is gentle, full of wonder, and even in the face of grime and cruelty. While Todd sees London as a city of rot, Antony insists that there's still good here, beauty and life. He even expresses pity for the beggar woman, urging Todd to show compassion. "Oh, pardon me, sir, but there's no need to fear the likes of her." It's the first fundamental difference between them. Where Todd is suspicious and bitter, Antony is trusting and kind. When he offers Todd money, it isn't for show. It's a genuine gesture. The moment tells us everything about Antony. He leads with empathy, even when it's not returned. That same idealism influences his relationship with Johanna. In Ah Miss, he spots her from afar and immediately is captivated. He's overwhelmed, not just by her beauty, but by what she represents. He's seen wonders all over the world, but nothing like her. And at that moment, he wants nothing more than a glance at her window from her. His love is instant, poetic, and incredibly naive. He doesn't know Johanna, not really, but he sees her alone in a window and decides she's the most beautiful thing he's ever encountered. She becomes not just a person, but a symbol of purity, of hope, of something worth fighting for in a world that otherwise seems so dark. This is Antony's role in the story. He's not the hero who slaves the villain or uncovers the truth. He's the light that briefly cuts through the fog, the one person who still believes in love, in rescue, and in the possibility of something better. However, as the story unfolds, that same light will be put to the test, because belief in goodness doesn't mean you understand the damage that's already been done, and loving someone doesn't always mean you know how to save them. Antony's obsession isn't with vengeance, it's with Johanna. From the moment he sees her, he's convinced that they're meant to be together. His love is immediate, but it's also a projection. He falls in love with a romantic vision rather than the real, traumatized girl trapped behind bars. For him, saving Johanna becomes the purest expression of love, even if he doesn't fully understand what she needs. In Johanna, Antony sings to Johanna with promise. He vows to fight for her, whispering, "Do they think that walls can hide you?" He's kind of funny like that. He's not bothered by Turpin's threats or the weight of the law, even admitting that one glimpse of her would be enough. "I had convinced I'd waken, satisfied enough to dream you." He fully plans to steal her away, positioning himself as a romantic rescuer. When Antony and Johanna connect on a more personal level, his devotion continues. What stands out is his care. He pauses before kissing her to get her consent. His love is gentle. It's driven not by possession, but by respect. But Antony's romantic rescue mission collides head-on with the reality when he barges into the barber shop, unknowingly announcing his plan to Judge Turpin. He begs and pleads, not just for love, but because he genuinely believes that saving her will prove his devotion. In that moment, his desperation is evident. He trusts that if he can rescue her, everything else will fall into place. Yet we see that love isn't always enough, and rescue isn't always what someone most needs. After Turpin learns of Antony's plan, Johanna vanishes, and Antony starts to spiral. He doesn't know where she's been taken or how to find her, only that she's gone. What follows is his descent into obsession marked by grief, longing, and his desperate clinging to hope. In the Johanna reprise of the Johanna Quartet, Antony sings not with sorrow. The lyrics mirror his earlier declarations of love, and now they're filled with regret. He clings to fragments of Johanna, her voice, her hair, the memory of her present. "I feel you, Johanna," he sings, but it's no longer a dream of what could be. It's a mourning for what he's lost. His love remains intact, but it's no longer romantic. Their fantasy has cracked, and in its place is something far more fragile, a man paralyzed by what he couldn't save. Still, Antony refuses to give up. He continues searching for Johanna. His obsession, once poetic, becomes chaotic. He acts on instinct, driven by devotion, not by strategy. And while his determination is admirable, it nearly destroys him. He rushes forward, propelled by hope, but in a world as brutal as this one, hope without caution can be deadly. Antony shifts from idealism to obsession. He doesn't lose sight of Johanna, but he loses sight of everything else. and in doing so, he mirrors everyone else in the story, desperate, delusional, and dangerously close to falling apart. Antony's desperation leads him to take whatever opportunity he can find, even when it's too good to be true. When Antony bursts into the pie shop months later, he's excited. He has finally found Johanna. Todd's suggestion to disguise himself as a wig maker and infiltrate the asylum is, to Antony, a way to repay his debt. He doesn't question it, he doesn't hesitate, he goes with the plan. The excitement in his voice, the eagerness to act, all reflect on how deeply he's invested in this rescue, not just as a goal, but as his purpose. What's so tragic about this moment is how pure he is. While Todd is calculating and cold, Antony is driven purely by hope. He's willing to risk everything again for a girl he still barely knows, but fully believes in. Todd doesn't share Antony's vision of love. To Todd, Johanna is bait. But to Antony, she's the future. And that disconnect, the difference between obsession as salvation versus obsession as vengeance, is what sets the two men on different paths. One is heading towards freedom and the other towards ruin. By the time the final sequence begins, Antony sees himself as a hero. He has the disguise Todd suggested for him and carries a gun, proof in his eyes that he's ready to go toe-to-toe with the world to save Johanna. As both he and Fogg pass other institutionalized women, he barely notices them, his focus remaining solely on Johanna. To him, she's the only one worth fighting for. This tunnel vision is noble, but it reveals how little he truly understands the suffering around them. When he finally gets his hands on Fogg in the asylum, he freezes. He's supposed to follow through with shooting him, but he can't. It's the first time we see the limits of his idealism. His love, even his bravery, is bound by his unwillingness to cross the line. Back in Todd's shop, Antony returns to the Antony we know. He dresses Johanna in sailor's clothes, soothing her panic with visions of broad seas and bright futures, happily wed in France, from the pearls of Spain, then home back to London, someday. He sings with her, promising a new life, painting escape as a love story. He refuses Johanna's plea to leave with him, insisting that the streets are unsafe, and pushes her back into a passive role. He reassures her, but knows nothing of what she needs, protection, rescue, or healing. Does Antony love Johanna? Yes. But love alone isn't enough, and rescuing her, while noble, won't undo the years of silence, control, and trauma she's endured. Still, it's a start. Antony enters this world as a dreamer. He isn't hardened like Todd, nor is he calculated like Lovett. He holds on to a belief in goodness and romance, in the possibility of escape. That hope is what makes him different and sometimes very dangerous. He sees her as someone to save before he ever sees her as someone to understand. And yet, there's something beautiful about that devotion. His idealism doesn't destroy him, it changes him. While Todd's fixation leads to death, Antony's leads to life, even if it's a flawed and fragile one. He survives not because he's the smartest or the strongest, but because he refuses to let the darkness pull him under. And maybe that's enough. Maybe in the wake of all the wreckage, two people who were once trapped, one by a room, the other by an idea, can figure out how to live freely together. Not perfectly, not instantly, but honestly. And that alone feels like a miracle. Also, Antony has one of my favorite lines. When Johanna's panicking, she goes, I can't. You can't leave me here. You left me here for months. He calms her, soothes her. He says, I'll leave before those lips have a chance to lose that smile. Fold. That would have got me. That gets me every time I hear it too. Tobias, Ragg. The world of Sweeney Todd is a dark, brutal place. It's bleak, filthy, and unforgiving, especially to those who are already vulnerable. We see that in Mrs. Lovett's desperation, in Sweeney Todd's rage, but we don't understand the full weight of it until Tobias Ragg. He is a child, sometimes played as young as 12, other times closer to 18. But no matter the age, he's still a kid trying to survive in a world that barely grants adults any mercy. He's introduced to us as Pirelli's assistant, then later as Mrs. Lovett, but none of this is something that he chooses. He doesn't want power or vengeance. He wants safety, stability, and he attaches himself to anyone who offers even a glimmer of protection. In Pirelli's miracle elixir, we meet Tobias as a quick-talking, energetic young salesman. He spins a lie selling Pirelli's bogus tonic. Whether his salesmanship is something he's learned from Pirelli or developed on his own, it's clear he's smart, and he knows how to survive. He performs with confidence, and underneath, you can feel his anxiety simmering, especially as the scam begins to unravel. He's used to being a pawn, a buffer between Pirelli and danger. But even as things spiral, he adapts. He deflects, pivots, and stays loyal. Tobias isn't naive in the sense of not seeing danger. He sees it constantly. He just can't retreat from it. He performs because that's what the world demands from him, and he's good at it. Too good for someone so young. From the moment Tobias is introduced, it's clear that survival in this world means attaching yourself completely and without question to whoever offers any protection. In the contest, Tobias is a prop. He stood at Pirelli's side, putting on a show, but none of it was for himself. It was all to keep Pirelli happy. His whole identity is built on serving someone else's lie. When Pirelli is exposed as a fraud, Tobias doesn't fight back. He doesn't run. He stays, even as Pirelli yells and smacks him in front of an entire audience. His pain is overlooked, and the people of London ignore his abuse. He's a working-class child in Victorian London, and there's no one coming to help him. so he learns to keep his head down and find someone else to follow. A key moment occurs after Lovett sings "Wait" to Todd. Pirelli then enters the pie shop to blackmail Todd just before his death. Even at that moment, Lovett encourages Tobias to leave Pirelli, yet he remains loyal despite the abuse he's endured. This demonstrates how deeply he has internalized the need to be helpful, obedient, and small. When Lovett decides to take him into work at the pie shop, it signifies not just a change in staff, but also a shift in purpose. Tobias redirects all of his desperate energy onto her. Lovett provides him with food, attention, and most importantly, the illusion of family. He doesn't question her motives because in his world, questioning is dangerous. Trust comes more easily, so he offers it to her freely. We see that trust taking root in God That's Good, where Tobias is fully immersed in Lovett's pie shop dream. He repeats the same pattern from Pirelli's Miracle Elixir, a bright, eager sales pitch for a product hiding something sinister. He works the crowd, sings the jingle, and does everything he can to boost business, but there's a visible strain under the surface. You can see the anxiety creeping in, mainly as the pressure builds and customers swarm. Tobias is performing again, but this time it's different. This time he wants the performance to be real. He wants Lovett's success to mean something. He calls attention to her brilliance, treating her like someone who has saved him. In doing so, he becomes part of her vision. He becomes part of the fantasy she's building, utterly unaware of the violence it rests on. Tobias isn't stupid, but he's desperate. Desperate to belong, desperate to matter, desperate for someone to protect him without hurting him in return. That desperation makes him loyal, but it also blinds him, because when someone's been hurt enough, they'll believe and do anything if it means protecting the people who make them feel safe. That's where we find Tobias in Not While I'm Around. By this point, his loyalty to Mrs. Lovett has turned into something fierce and fragile. He doesn't just trust her, he loves her. And not in some distorted or possessive way, but in the purest sense a child can. Protective, unconditional, and entirely one-sided. He sings to her from the heart, begging her not to trust Sweeney Todd. His voice is soft but full of urgency. You can feel the shift. He's starting to sense something's wrong. He hasn't named it yet, nor is he accusing anyone outright, but the fear is there. He knows Todd is dangerous. He knows something awful is closing in on him. And still, he doesn't think for a second that Mrs. Lovett might be part of it. She's his mum. She gave him worth, a role, and a place to belong. And in a world like this, that kind of kindness means everything. When he calls her mum, it's not just a term of endearment, it's a claim. It's him saying, "You are my person." That attachment is what makes the song so painful. Tobias doesn't see Lovett's manipulation. He sees her as vulnerable, someone who needs his protection. He talks about monsters and demons with the sincerity of a child convinced that he can chase them away. "Nothing's going to harm you, not while I'm around," he promises, now realizing that she's the one holding the knife behind his back. And that's the worst part. Tobias's instincts are correct. There is something sinister going on. There are monsters in the shop, but he's looking in the wrong direction. After singing his promise to protect Mrs. Lovett, she gives him what he thinks is a sign of trust, responsibility. She sews in the bakehouse, teaches him how to use the meat grinder and how to tend the oven. To Tobias, this feels like love, like belief, like family. But this doesn't last. Everything starts to fall apart the moment Beadle Bamford's body comes crashing down in front of him, right after he finds hair and fingernails in the pie that he's been eating. And in his mind, it's all Todd. Todd has been killing people and turning them into food. And Mrs. Lovett, in Tobias's eyes, she's still the good one. The one who took him in, the one who protected him, the one who couldn't possibly be part of this nightmare. But we all know better. We all know it was her idea. We knew Tobias isn't just some kid who stumbled onto a secret. He's a pawn, a tool, someone Lovett and Todd use until he's no longer helpful. And as they sing and stalk the bakehouse in the final sequence, searching for him, it all becomes horrifyingly clear. Lovett repeats the very words Tobias once sang to her, "Nothing's gonna harm you," but now it's more sinister. She's not comforting, she's hunting. This is where Tobias becomes more than just a symbol of innocence. He becomes a victim of manipulation so deep it robs him of any real agency. His loyalty has been exploited. His kindness was twisted. And now, in the dark, with everything he believed in turned upside down, Tobias is left to figure out what to do when the only people who ever made him feel safe are the very ones trying to destroy him. By the end, Tobias is gone. Physically, he's there, crawling out of the sewers. But mentally, he's broken. What we see in the final sequence is not the same boy who sold Miracle Elixir or clung to Mrs. Lovett's apron. This Tobias is pale, twitching, muttering to himself, and reciting nursery rhymes. He's been through too much, abandoned, betrayed, and used, and it's all finally caught up with him. When he emerges from the sewers, he picks up the razor, the same one Todd used on everyone else, and fulfills the promise he once sang with such innocence, "Nothing's gonna harm you." Todd was the man who took everything from him, his safety, his trust, and the only person he thought loved him, so he took his life by slitting his throat. As the chaos of the final sequence begins to come to a close, Tobias doesn't stand over the body with triumph. He just starts turning the meat grinder, like Mrs. Lovett had taught him. His voice is soft as he repeats her instructions. It's the final brutal image of what this world does to children like him. Used, manipulated, then discarded. And in the end, Tobias is still trying to be useful, still playing the part he was given. Tobias' story is a tragedy, but unlike Turpin or Bamford's, whose downfalls serve as cautionary tales of corruption or power, Tobias' tragedy is sadder. It is a tragedy of unconditional loyalty. He isn't driven by revenge or delusional love or hunger for control. He just wants to survive, to belong, and in a world like this one, the kind of purity doesn't get protected. It gets used. He is the mirror to Todd, both shaped by desperation, both drawn to violence, but while Todd chooses vengeance, Tobias is pushed to it and torn apart by the people he's trusted most. His descent into madness isn't a twist. It's the inevitable outcome of what happens when innocence meets a world run by monsters. Tobias is a warning, not to children, but to the people who raised them. To the adults, the mentors, the caretakers who think children can't see or understand what's happening around them. They can. And when you betray that trust, when you fail to protect them, when you use them for your own needs, you don't just hurt them, you shape them. Tobias isn't stupid. He's a child trying to survive a world that was never built to keep him safe. And in the end, he does survive, but at the cost of everything he once was. Adolfo Pirelli / Daniel O'Higgins. I almost left Pirelli out. His time on stage is so short-lived that he is easily forgotten as a character. But in a show obsessed with desperation, even ego-driven greed has its place. Pirelli's obsession isn't with revenge, power, or justice. It's with reputation. He wants to be admired, feared, and paid for it. We don't even meet Pirelli directly at first. We meet the idea of him. Tobias hypes him up like he's the greatest barber who had ever lived, selling a miracle elixir that supposedly does wonders. Tobias believes it, or at least wants to believe it, because that belief gives him a sense of stability. Pirelli uses that. He doesn't just sell a tonic, he sells a persona, and Tobias is both his mascot and his shield. In Pirelli's miracle elixir, we see the fundamental nature of Pirelli's desperation. He's not trying to make something better, he's trying to look like someone who has. He hides behind Tobias when the crowd starts to turn, letting a child take the fall while he watches from the shadows. When things escalate and he's forced to intervene, it's not out of a sense of responsibility, it's because his brand is being threatened. Everything about Pirelli is constructed. The name, the accent, the products, the performance. His goal isn't survival, it's status. Pirelli's entire persona is built on performance, and nowhere is that more evident than in his song, The Contest. This is his big moment, the one time he gets to command the spotlight entirely on his own terms. And what does he do with it? He brags. He sings about how divine his hands are and how he shaved the Pope himself. The razor to him isn't a tool, it's a trophy. He's not trying to prove skill, he's trying to preserve his myth. During the contest, Pirelli positions himself as the king of barbers, while Beadle Bamford as a judge to legitimize the spectacle. But the performance quickly reveals more than he intends. He's theatrical, flamboyant, and loud, but most productions show him barely touching the man he's supposed to be shaving. He's too caught up in his voice and his pride. His hands move, but his focus is entirely on the crowd. And by the time he starts shaving, Todd has already won. The moment he loses, he lashes out, striking Tobias or threatening him with lines like, "Don't mutter or you go back to the gutter," after losing the tooth-pulling contest to Todd again. His violence isn't about discipline, it's about control. Pirelli sees Tobias as property, just another extension of his performance. He's not just a fraud, he's a desperate man clinging to an illusion of power, and when that illusion is challenged, it turns to rage. Pirelli doesn't die because he's evil, he dies because he's arrogant. After Wait, when Pirelli goes to the barber shop, he believes he's walking into a negotiation. He asks to speak with Todd alone, and when he does, he makes the fatal mistake of revealing who he is, Daniel O'Higgins, a man from Todd's past. But instead of running or backing down, he demands a cut of Todd's profits. He threatens to expose him to Judge Turpin if he's not paid. And that's where his story ends. Pirelli walks into that room thinking he's clever, thinking that he has leverage. But what he doesn't understand is that Sweeney Todd is not a man who can be reasoned with anymore. Prison has changed him. Obsession has changed him. He's not interested in saving face or splitting profits. He's interested in revenge. And Pirelli, in all his theatrical bravado, doesn't realize how dangerous the game has become until it is too late. His death isn't just quick, it's unceremonious. While technically the first death in the show, all his performance and all of his flair is put to waste as he is murdered and shoved into a trunk. Forgotten, his body is hidden, his name dropped, and the show moves on. Because in this world, people like Pirelli, those who fake power, who mistake ego for security, get taken out fast. Pirelli may be one of the shortest-lived characters in Sweeney Todd, but his role is far from forgettable. He's not like Turpin, whose power is institutional, or the Beadle, whose power comes from his loyalty. Pirelli is something else entirely. He's what happens when desperation wears a smile and a nice coat. He's outperformance, loud, flashy, but entirely hollow underneath. He doesn't survive because he doesn't understand the rules of the world he stepped into. He thinks that flair is enough. That is, if you appear successful and speak with loud enough authority, people will believe you. But Sweeney Todd doesn't reward image. It doesn't reward clout. Pirelli dies because he assumes power without ever earning it. He mistakes volume for presence and ego for influence. And the moment someone like Todd, who's running on real rage, real obsession, comes face to face with him, he's wiped out in seconds. No redemption, no second act, just a body in a trunk and a cautionary tale about what happens when you try to pretend to be powerful without ever realizing who's holding the razor. In a story built on vengeance, grief, and survival, Pirelli reminds us that ego can be just as dangerous, and in some cases, just as fatal. Beggar Woman / Lucy Barker. Even though the musical is called Sweeney Todd, the real tragedy is Lucy Barker. She may not sing the show's most dramatic songs or command the stage, but her story is the reason any of this happened. She is the thread that ties every piece of this brutal world together. From Benjamin Barker's exile, Judge Turpin's unchecked power, Johanna's stolen childhood, and ultimately to Sweeney Todd's violent descent. And yet, when we first meet her, we don't know her as Lucy. We don't know her at all. She's just the Beggar Woman. The Beggar Woman's entrance in No Place Like London is eerie and easy to overlook. She suffers on stage, muttering half-coherent pleas for alms, her tone jumping between desperation and vulgarity. She describes herself as miserable, but it's not just her situation, it's the entire world around her. In a few lines, we get a glimpse into how trauma has twisted her sense of self. She offers herself up sexually with lines like, "Wouldn't you like to push me crumpet?" But not out of seduction, out of necessity. Her sexuality, once weaponized against her by Turpin, is now something she uses as currency. There's madness in her voice, but there's clarity too. Moments where she seems to recognize Todd, though she can't quite name him. This contrast between who she was and who she's become is the tragedy of Lucy Barker. She once lived a stable, comfortable life. Now she exists on the stage, a figure so ghost-like that the man who loved her doesn't even recognize her. Her identity has been so thoroughly erased by the trauma she's endured, the assault, the separation from her family, and the years of abandonment, that even her name is gone, and no one listens. But Lucy isn't a background character. She's the center of everything. She's the obsession of others, of Turpin, who violated her, of Todd, who wants vengeance for her, of Johanna, who is shaped by her absence. Her presence, even in fragments, haunts every character's motivations. She is the moral weight of the story, even if no one realizes it until it's too late. Lucy Barker's story is one that came from a life of comfort and safety to one of constant danger, degradation, and madness. She was once a woman with a home, a family, and a future. Now she wanders the streets nameless and forgotten. Her voice cracked and broken, her memories slipping through her fingers. What drives her now isn't hope or even revenge. It's survival. Everything about her is shaped by instinct. She begs because she has to. She sings because it's the only language left to her. Her desperation is physical, rooted in hunger and trauma, but it's also emotional. Somewhere inside the mind of the Beggar Woman is Lucy Barker, clinging to what she remembers of being a mother, a wife, and a person who mattered. Her obsession isn't something she chose. It's what trauma left behind. Her memory of Todd isn't clear, but it's persistent. In every morning she shouts. In every crude joke, there's a trace of someone trying to remember who she was and who she lost. She doesn't know it's her husband standing before her, but she knows he matters. She fixates on him, sensing something familiar without ever understanding the tragic irony of their distance. In The Barber and His Wife, Todd remembers Lucy as virtuous, an image of grace and goodness that makes her descent into madness all the more devastating. But even in his version, there's that distance. He mourns her as someone gone. Meanwhile, she's still there, a few feet away, alive, but suffering. Through Mrs. Lovett's story, we learn what happened. Lucy was assaulted by Judge Turpin, pushed to the edge, and eventually to a suicide attempt. Her refusal to submit, her integrity, became the weapon used against her. Poor thing, Lovett says, with pity and calculation. But beneath that is the brutal truth. In Sweeney Todd's world, virtue is not rewarded, it's crushed. Lucy's obsession isn't about justice. It's about the pieces of her life that remain, even if she doesn't know how to put them back together. Then later in Ah Miss, Lucy interrupts Antony. Johanna is Turpin's ward, she tells him, warning him to stay away. In that instance, she's no longer the incoherent beggar woman. She's a mother. She recognizes danger, even if she can't articulate why. But that moment doesn't last. Her trauma pulls her back, and the clarity fades. Still, it matters. It's proof that some part of Lucy Barker survives under the grime and the grief. By the time we reach the second half of Sweeney Todd, Lucy tries to expose the horror happening in the pie shop, but every attempt is shut down. That isolation is heartbreaking. Once Lucy was a respected wife and a mother. Now she's reduced to begging for scraps, warning strangers through broken songs, and trying to cling to sanity. And God, that's good. Lovett dismisses her presence and reduces Lucy's suffering to nothing more than a nuisance. Still, she continues to hover nearby. Then comes the Johanna quartet. Lucy is still there, too, but feels completely invisible. She sniffs the smoke from the bakehouse and sings about the city being on fire, that something is wrong going on in the pie shop, and Lucy has been trying to shout, "Wake up," to all the people around her, but no one listens. And then, the moment. She sees the Beadle enter the shop, but never come out. She finally realizes the truth, that something is happening there. Lucy does what she thinks any sane person would do. She rushes in to expose it. But this is Sweeney Todd, a world where obsession overrides innocence. As Lucy steps forward, Todd raises his razor and kills her instantly. It's brutal. The man who spent years chasing vengeance for her, who made her his reason for returning and unleashed a path of blood, becomes her murderer. That is the most horrible truth of all. Obsession doesn't destroy its target, it becomes the killer of its cause. She dies unheard and unseen, just as she spent her last days begging to be seen. Lucy Barker may not appear on stage as often as Todd, Lovett, or Tobias, but her presence matters throughout the musical. Her story doesn't just begin with tragedy, it is the tragedy. She is the reason Sweeney returned, the reason Johanna is imprisoned, the reason justice is sought and ultimately shattered. Without Lucy, there is no Barker, no Todd, no vengeance. Her story reveals what trauma can do. Lucy once had a name, a life, a future, but after enduring sexual violence, loss, and abandonment, she's reduced to a beggar woman haunting the streets, denied even the recognition of those who loved her most. Her survival is not hopeful in the traditional sense. It's not heroic, it's painful, but it is survival. She lives in fragments and mutters and half-remembered warnings, and for many women, especially those silenced by systems of power, that kind of fragmented existence is real. Her death is one of the most heart-wrenching moments in the musical, not just because it's violent or ironic, but because it's the culmination of everything the show has been building toward. It brings the cycle full circle. The very thing Todd devoted his life to avenging, Lucy, is lost at his own hands. Not because he stopped loving her, but because he stopped seeing her. That's what obsession does. It dehumanizes, even when it claims to be rooted in love. And yet there's something in Lucy's story that feels redemptive. Not because she gets a happy ending, but because she refused to disappear. She survived long enough to try, long enough to warn others, long enough to reach back toward the woman she used to be. Her voice, broken and ragged, still demanded to be heard. She is proof that trauma does not erase truth, even when the world refuses to listen. Lucy Barker isn't just the tragic wife or the mad woman in the street. She's the living reminder that every act of vengeance began with a woman who deserved mercy. And while the show ends in blood and ruin, Lucy's role in the story shows that we must never forget where it all began. In a world consumed by revenge and ego, she stands as a version of hope, one that insists we pay attention to the ones we overlook, and never forget the cost of not seeing what's right in front of us. Everyone in Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street, is desperate for something. For Johanna, it's freedom. For Antony, it's love. For Tobias, it's protection. For Lucy, it's survival. Even characters like Judge Turpin and Mrs. Lovett are driven by control or companionship. Their lives, their choices, even their downfalls are shaped by what they want most but can't seem to reach. Each character clings to something that gives them a sense of purpose or hope. Johanna clings to the idea of a life beyond her window. Antony believes in rescue and in true love. Tobias finds safety in people who ultimately exploit him. Lovett imagines a future where she's loved back, and Turpin clings to the belief that his desire is justified and untouchable. But the person behind all of this, the very thing that drives the story forward, is Sweeney Todd himself, and his need for vengeance. His desperation pulls everyone else in. His pain reshapes the world around him, and through Lovett's manipulation, it becomes something even darker. Their combined obsessions turn his personal vendetta into a citywide tragedy. Todd isn't the only desperate character, but his desperation defines the story and ultimately consumes it. What's always struck me about Sweeney Todd is how much it reminds me of Murder on the Orient Express. Ironically, both have Johnny Depp. That was not intentional. In both stories, one man's decision creates a chain reaction that destroys the lives of everyone around him. In this case, it's Judge Turpin's decision to take Lucy for himself, even after she said no. That becomes the match that lights the fire on everything else. That single moment of power and entitlement of violence doesn't just destroy Lucy, it creates a ripple effect for everybody. Lucy's trauma doesn't stay with her. It scars Johanna, who's raised in captivity by the same man who hurt her mother. It reaches Todd, who returns not just filled with grief but consumed by a need for revenge. And it eventually pulls in Antony and Tobias, who, through different paths, each find themselves marked by the same system of cruelty and corruption. This story is a story of trauma. Where trauma spreads, and in trying to manage it, trying to avenge or escape it, most of these characters just fall deeper into it. Some obsessions, like Antony's love for Johanna, do feel hopeful, but even that is shaped by the pain around him. Others, Lovett's desire for Todd, Turpin's need for control, are corrupted from the start. What started as one man's entitlement became a web of hurt that touched nearly everyone in the story. This story isn't just about what happens to Lucy, it's about what happens because of Lucy. At its core, Sweeney Todd is a story about what happens when power goes unchecked, when those in power use it to exploit the desperate. The ones at the top, Judge Turpin and Beadle Bamford, embody this. Turpin uses his authority to take what he wants without consequences. Bamford turns a blind eye, enabling injustice in exchange for favor and control. They represent a system that feeds on vulnerability and that system that reshapes those it victimizes. Sweeney Todd returns with vengeance in his heart, believing he can tip the scales by turning violence back on the powerful. But in his descent, he becomes what he hates. He stops looking for Lucy. He stops protecting Johanna. His obsession becomes indistinguishable from cruelty. And in the end, he's not holding the powerful accountable. He's spilling blood without making any real change. There's a brief moment of clarity before his end. Todd recognizes, too late, that his path hasn't fixed anything. He hasn't restored balance. He just added more bodies to the pile. The musical isn't just condemning those in power. It's warning us about what happens when desperation turns into destruction and when revenge replaces justice. It reminds us that obsession, whether with love, safety, or power, can blind even the most righteous until they're just another cog in the machine. Sweeney Todd might present itself as a revenge tragedy, but what it really offers is something deeper, a story of desperation. It asks what happens when people are pushed to the edge, when trauma festers, and when obsession takes over everything. Every character we followed, whether driven by hope, heartbreak, or hunger, makes a choice shaped by the world around them, and in almost every case, those choices lead to ruin. But the musical doesn't give us direct answers. It doesn't say that desperation makes someone good or evil. It just shows us what it costs. Desperation might explain Todd's rage, Johanna's fear, Anthony's devotion, Tobias' collapse, or even Lovett's ambition, but it never excuses them. That's where the tragedy is. These characters weren't born monstrous. They were broken, misled, and in many ways forgotten. In the end, Sweeney Todd isn't just a warning about revenge or power. It asks what we owe each other in a world that keeps failing the vulnerable. It says, be careful who you dismiss, who you exploit, who you ignore, because the desperate will act. And when they do, it's not justice that returns, it's the cost. The cost of manipulation, the cost of dismissal, and the cost of silence. And in that moment, the vulnerable will unleash everything the world refused to hear, as they, and you, should. Now to end on that, let's do my favorite part of the musical analysis and rank every single song. Probably the hardest part of doing this, other than like obviously the analysis part, is ranking every single song. So here I am ranking all 25 songs from Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street, starting with Parlor Songs, The Letter, The Ballad of Sweeney Todd, The Contest, Ladies and Their Sensitivities, Epiphany, Miss, Greenfinch and Linenbird, Mea Culpa, Pretty Women, The Barber and His Wife, The Johanna Quartet, Wait, No Place Like London, The Final Sequence, Johanna, Poor Thing, My Friends, Kiss Me, A Little Priest, By the Sea, God That's Good, Pirelli's Miracle Elixir, The Worst Pies in London, and Not While I'm Around. Peep how Tobias' songs are all the top. That's my list. That's my video. But Sweeney Todd means something different to everyone, especially going back on this musical. Now we're going off script. I really thought it was just a story about cannibalism and pies. As I've kind of hinted at, I really just see it more as a story about corruption, power, trauma. And I really do like that. It's a really great musical, a really great story for understanding what one lustful decision can create a ripple effect and how it damages the lives of so many people so quickly. I really want to know where you guys stand. I really want to know what you think. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? What do you think I completely missed? Should I have done an analysis on Fog, even though he's on stage for only like 5 minutes? What songs do you think hit hardest for you, and which ones do you often skip? Let me know. I want to hear everything. And with that, that's all I have for you guys today. I've loved getting to appreciate Sweeney Todd, and I'm really excited to dive into Hamilton. I will be talking about that Tony's performance. I will be talking about it because everyone keeps telling me about it. Thank you so much for watching, for sticking around this long and watching my other videos. These video essays take me a long time to do, between the research, the scripting, and like balancing having a life. But knowing that people are like tuning in and engaging with them really means a lot. Hamilton and Wicked are next. Hamilton and Wicked, like I'm dead set, those are my next two. I really want to do Waitress. I also really want to do Prince of Egypt. I really could break down Prince of Egypt and like I'd have a lot of fun with it. I love all the support you guys give me. I love that you're here. If you're just here at this point, thank you. I gotta do a little heart. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's it. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys all in the next take. Bye-bye.